I've learned something over the last about 2.5 years that's been really life-changing for me. And I'm a coach. I do leadership coaching and I do life coaching. And I teach people this understanding that I'm going to share with you tonight. And so it's been life-changing for me. I see it be life-changing for my clients. And it's just really, it's really cool and it's fun to share. So it's fun in here. I'm sitting and I'm going to talk kind of quietly and slowly. So, and that's really on purpose. Part of this understanding is to kind of show you what starts to happen when you get quiet. And when you start to get quiet and you start to listen to your inner self. So I guess I just want you to know that it's intentional, and kind of invite you to be in this space with me. So all right. So what is this? What is this understanding? Well, before I explain it to you, let me just preface this by saying that what I'm going to talk to you about is 3 principles, and it's called the 3 principles. And has anybody ever heard of the 3 principles? No? Okay. And so what's a principle? Well, a principle is something that's always true. Right? So one of the best examples is gravity, right? It's always there. It doesn't really mean anything that it's there. Like, because we know there is gravity doesn't really mean that there's something that we should do about it. These principles are the same way. They explain what is. They're not a prescription for how you should be or how anything should be. They just explain what is. And yet they explain what is in a way that's not always obvious to us. In fact, in our culture, we tend to see things in a different way. So I'm getting there. I know you're all wondering, like, what's she going to tell us? So before I get into it, I do want to give you sort of a heads up that there are 4 reactions that I get when I talk to people about this. And one is that sometimes people say that this is the most unbelievable thing I've ever heard. I've never looked at the world this way before, and it's so cool to hear it. That's one possibility. A second possibility is I have no idea what you're talking about, but there's something that's making me curious, so keep talking because I want to hear more. Another possibility is, well, yeah, of course, I've always seen the world this way. You're not telling me anything I don't already know. And then the fourth is, no, what you're saying is not true for me. I don't see it, I don't agree with you, and it's not my experience. So I share that because I don't want you to be surprised when you find yourself thinking one of those things. And whichever way you respond, I would just say, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to see something new, if it is something new for you. And if it doesn't resonate, that's cool too. Okay. I forgot to ask how much time I have. Do any of you guys know how much time I have?
Is it 40 minutes? Was it 40?
All right, well, we'll take it till at least 6, and then I'll do it for a minute. Okay, so what are the 3 principles? They are called mind, consciousness, and thought. Okay, and those are just labels, but mind, consciousness, and thought. Okay, so I'm going to start with thought. So the principle of thought is the fact that we think. And the fact that we think all day long, every day. And that ticker tape of thought that's going through our heads all the time, all day long, actually creates our experience in life. And the thing that's new for some some of us to hear, and was definitely new for me when I heard it the first time. I always thought my experiences that I was having in my life were creating my thinking. And when I started to see that it's actually the reverse, that my thinking is creating my experience, it was kind of like the world tilted for me. So I'll give you a couple of examples, a couple of the most simple examples. One is that, so let's say we're looking outside and it's raining. And I might say, look at the rain, it's so beautiful. And you might say, look outside, what a miserable day it is. Really, really simple example of how we create our experience. And it can even get more complex, and it can impact our relationships. So I have a doctor, he's actually my gastroenterologist. I was having some stomach issues recently, and I went to him. And he's not a nice guy, right? Not a nice guy. And we've all met doctors like that. They have a reputation, either your doctor has a nice bedside manner or doesn't, right? And this guy has no bedside manner. In fact, he was really, really rude when I was in the office. But what I noticed was that I didn't care. He didn't bother me. And there might have been times in my life where I would have met him and really been offended that he was treating me so rudely. And yet for some reason, and I can't explain it, but he didn't bother me at all, and I kind of laughed at him. And I know he's a good doctor, and he's going to, do what I need as a doctor, but I'm just not bothered by the fact that he's super rude. And it's just another example of how it's my thinking that's creating that relationship with him. It's not anything that he's doing or not doing. The other way that understanding thought has impacted me over the time that I have learned this understanding is recognizing that thoughts come into our head and they come and they go, and they come and they go and they come and they go. And it's really up to me whether I hold on to a thought or not. A thought, sometimes it seems like it's an instruction, and yet it's really not. It's just a thought. And so it can be an invitation. It can be something I decide to listen to, but it's not something that I have to listen to. And even going as far as being really upset about something, I can have an upset thought come into my head, and I don't even need to believe that. I can kind of say, oh, isn't that interesting? I'm feeling upset. But it doesn't, I don't have to create another story about it. I don't have to create another layer of thinking. I don't need to say, I wonder why I'm upset. What do I need to do about it? How do I get rid of it even? I can just say, oh, interesting, upset thought. I can be okay with that. And eventually it'll go away. So that's a little bit of my experience on thought. The next one is, and I'm gonna talk for a little while, but then I'd really, really like you guys to ask me questions. So I'm gonna talk to you about universal mind, and consciousness, and then, so please, as I'm talking and questions come up, I hope you'll hold on to them and ask me. So what is mind? Well, universal mind is the principle that there's some intelligence behind everything that happens in this world. There's something that we can't explain. And while the principle of thought, it really sits in our psychology, the principle of mind sits in our spiritual nature. And it doesn't matter whether this isn't religious, it's spiritual without being religious. So no matter what your belief is, we can all recognize that there's nothing we have to do to make our hearts beat. And that we can't explain that. And there's nothing that we have to do to make blood flow through our body. And we can't explain that. And there's nothing we have to do to make the earth revolve around the sun. And there's nothing that we have to do to make the trees change colors every fall and lose their leaves over the winter and get new leaves in the spring. There's some intelligence behind all of that we live in. And that intelligence is the same thing that we experience when we have a new idea, when we have common sense, when we're trying to solve a problem and all of a sudden the answer comes to us. The kind of thinking that we do that isn't from an intellectual place, the stuff that we didn't learn in school, the stuff that we just know, when we make a decision and we just know it's the right thing, that's part of that same universal intelligence that allows our hearts to beat all day long. And when we start to let our thoughts settle and allow ourselves to be in that place, it becomes more and more available to us. And the thing about it is that our thoughts can get really loud, and that inner space, that inner wisdom, that inner voice is really quiet. And when the thoughts start to settle, and we kind of allow it to sort of come up from a deeper place more often, and we start to listen to it more often, it becomes available to us more and more and more. It's a great, I mean, it's just such an incredible resource, whether you're trying to solve a problem, whether you're trying to create a new experience in your life, whether you're trying to make a decision. Anytime you don't know what to do and you just leave the problem alone and the solution comes to you, all of this is coming from universal mind. And then the third principle is the principle of consciousness. And consciousness is our ability to be aware. So we can be aware that there's this inner wisdom available to us. We can be aware that we live in a world of thought. We can be aware that we're all up in our heads and that we're kind of, like sometimes driving ourselves crazy because we're all up in our head. And there's something about that awareness, that consciousness that goes up and down all the time, never constant. So if we get really upset about something or we're all up in our heads about something, our consciousness tends to drop and our ability to see possibilities narrows. And then when we settle and we get closer in touch with that inner space, our consciousness gets bigger and we start to see more possibilities. So these three principles, they're really what makes us all the same. We all experience this. It explains our experience. And like I said before, there's no therefore, but there's something about being able to see them that starts to open up possibilities in our lives. So before I turn this over to your questions, I do want to credit where this all came from. There was a gentleman named Sid Banks, and he lived in a place called Salt Spring Island in western Canada, near Vancouver, I think. And he had an enlightenment experience in the 70s, and he started to talk about this. And he passed away, I think, in 2004. He spent most of from that time, from the 70s until he passed away, sharing this with the world. And he started out with a small circle that he taught this to, and it's grown to thousands of people, thousands and thousands of people now. And it's impacting lives all over the world, which has been really, really cool to see and really cool to start to be part of. And so I'd love to hear what it sparks for you guys. I'd love to hear, you know, if you've always known this, I'd love to hear from you. If it says something that sounds curious and you want to hear more about it, I'd love to hear from you, or anything else, whatever's on your mind.
Does the guy have like a YouTube channel or something?
So you can find some of his videos on YouTube, and you can also, his website is still up, and it's sidbanks.com, and there are videos and
What's his name
resources
again?
on it. Sid Banks, S-Y-D.
SYD?
Yeah, yeah, and if you Google 3 principles, you'll find actually lots of resources. There's an organization called 3 Principles Global Community, 3PGC, and they also have a website that has lots of resources on it.
It sounds kind of complicated.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because on the one hand, it's like infinitely deep and an infinite journey to see more and more and more and more and more. And on the other hand, it's crazy simple, right? There's some universal intelligence in the world. We live in a world of thought. That thought creates our experiences, and we have consciousness that allows us to be aware.
Is there any connection between this way of thinking and afterlife?
Well, you know, I don't think any of us really know what afterlife is.
Right.
However, I mean, I do have my own kind of theories about the fact that there's this essence, there's this intelligence that comes before thought. Like, you know that, it's like, so thought is a form. Anytime you have a thought, it's a form. Well, it comes from something formless, right?
Okay.
So that formless energy, it seems to me like, how could it ever not exist? Now that's, you know, that's my own theory. But I think your question's really interesting.
Well, I just lost somebody close to my family, and it's just kind of like, I'm hearing different experiences that people have where they are able to make a connection with people that have moved on. I don't know.
I have one of my grandmothers. I feel like I'm closer to her now than I've ever been, and she's gone a long time. Right? So where does that
wild.
closeness come from? Yeah.
It's interesting.
We got really deep really fast. We can come up a little bit. Because this stuff's really practical too. You know, it's like, when you don't know what to do, what do you do, right? And that happens to all of us. Well, when you don't know what to do, then you kind of can put the question out to the universe or whatever, and you can say, you know, I'm looking for an answer for this. And then you walk away from it, and the next day or the next week, all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, I know what to do.
That would be like the universe, God to me.
Yeah.
God, that's God.
Yeah.
So my universe is not, it's God.
Yeah.
And that's who I can rely on and
Yeah.
ask.
And
help
His
me.
grace.
Yeah,
God's
well,
grace.
and that's so, who said that grace? Who said grace? Yeah. So I love that, because for me, it's the universe, it's God, it's grace. It doesn't matter what we call it. I agree with whatever that name is. One of my colleagues has a client that didn't like the word God and called it Bob.
Messiah.
Yeah, but so whatever that word is for you, it doesn't matter. And the thing that's so cool is that, you know, we could be deeply religious and have a really close relationship with God and understand the spiritual nature, or we can say, I don't believe in God. I have clients who say, I don't believe in God, and yet they feel that spiritual connection with something that they can't quite understand. So yes, for all of us. Yeah. Who else?
Wouldn't it be just like a process of you getting older and getting more wise just from your experiences that you've had. Couldn't you attribute it to that?
I think for some people, yeah. And I think other people, you know, that's probably a function of consciousness. And I've seen people really young who are really, really in touch with listening to their inner wisdom and awareness of their thoughts. I have one guy in a discussion group I lead right now who's 23 and super, super in touch with listening to his inner wisdom. And, you know, I know other people who are much, much older who never get there. So yeah, for some of us, I do think it's a function of our age, and for others, no. That's my experience. Who else?
I got some.
Yeah.
Don't laugh.
Only if it's funny.
Well, no, you know what I think it is? It's like, it's death. Death is what brings us to reality. Because you know, when someone dies, that's when you really start to think. Especially your mother.
Yeah.
When your mother goes. Because she takes everything with her. She takes the key to your life. The only person that knows everything about you. And then you're stuck without her, like a phone charger without a charger. And there's none available. They don't make them anymore. So now you're an uncharged phone for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Now you can laugh.
No.
Well, I just wonder what there is to see in that.
My dad died when I was 8. So I've always been very wanting to know what's out there. You know, since I was a little girl.
Yeah.
And, so I've always been interested in stuff,
Yeah.
like the Ouija board.
Well, you know, the thing that strikes me in listening to you is that there's a love that we feel with the people that we feel it with, and that love is a connection that comes from an energy and an essence.
Mhm.
And that energy and essence, that love, that's what resides in us permanently. It's at the core of what we all are. And it's always there for us as a resource. And it's the only thing that ever covers it up is our personal thinking, which again can be really loud. And I guess, you know, at least for me, there's something, I went through cancer in 2016, and it was something about, and when you talk about death, you know, I never really thought I was gonna die, but there's something about that diagnosis that helped, you know, you touch it, you touch that possibility. And in that space of touching that possibility, what I found in me was that really deep sense of love. And in knowing that that's always there to kind of take care of me. And that it's inside. That it's inside, it's not in the outside world. So I don't know, I don't know if that speaks to what you were saying, but it's just kind of what occurred to me when I heard you say it.
It just seems like that's really the only time people stop and reflect, because it's so final, you know, and it makes people think, wake up to everything about themselves.
So let me offer an invitation to any of you for whom that resonates or even doesn't resonate, that's you don't have to wait till then. You know, people spend their whole lives searching, right? Searching for some peace of mind and looking everywhere for it except inside. And yet it's always there if we turn around and we look in instead of looking out.
So do you really never find yourself getting angry at anybody or disliking anybody? Or-
I love that question so much. Desiree, what time do I need to finish?
Maybe like 12.
Okay. I love that question so much. I'm so glad you asked. So here's the deal. We are born with a spiritual essence, and we are born with a human nature, okay? That human nature means we get to be human. It means we get to be angry and frustrated and pissed off and sad and depressed and anxious and every other emotion that you could ever think of. And that's human. And when we allow ourselves to feel those emotions, to be in that space, and not think that because we feel them, there's something wrong with us or that we need to be fixed in any way, all of a sudden we get to be ourselves. And that is so freeing. That was the first thing that attracted me to this understanding, was the recognition that I could just be myself, that I didn't need to live with anybody's shoulds, and that the way I am is fine with all my flaws. Yeah, so thank you for asking that.
So she does get upset.
I do. Although I'll give a little bit of a butt to it, because I don't get upset in the same way, and it doesn't last as long. And I recognize that when I get upset with somebody else, that is coming from my thinking. And so even when I get mad at him back there, no, it's impossible. I start to it bubbles up as laughing. Like, I'll get mad, I feel angry, and then all of a sudden I remember, oh yeah, it's coming from me, not you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of funny that I still do that. You know, I mean, it's just, yeah, so be human, and then recognize that the thinking, if we let it pass, it goes. If we hold on to it, it'll stick around for as long as we hold on to it.
I don't understand how, when you're angry with someone, how it's always coming from you, that it's your thinking that's causing it.
Yeah. Trying to think if I could come up with another example.
I mean, I guess I understand in some ways,
Yeah.
somebody did something and I wouldn't do it like that, well, it's my problem, they get the same results as whatever, or there's no reason I should be angry at that,
Yeah.
but when it's, I don't know how to say it.
We think that, okay, so we're traveling down a path we call life. And we're having experiences, and we're having emotions, okay? And for whatever reason, we think that those experiences and those emotions are interconnected. And they're just not. And I know, and it's not like somebody told me that and I went, like, for me, the only thing that I could understand the first time I heard this was the looking out the window at the weather. I could understand that you and I could be both looking out at the weather and having a different experience. But I didn't understand how, if my coworker said something to me that I considered inconsiderate, how could that have not made me angry? How could it have been my thinking that made me angry and not what they said?
Oh, and how you interpret it.
Well, I think that's a great way of putting it. That's a really great way of putting it.
I say, boy, I don't like you. And he would say, but why? And I would say, because. And I don't just have a reason right there on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's just some reason I don't like you. And you know what? We'll both agree to disagree. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Well,
Not that it's true that I don't like it.
the invitation is to path of trying to figure it out. I can feel upset, and then that there doesn't have to be anything else after that. Because anything else anything else comes after that, I've made up.
And I have never heard one of these meetings or this room so quiet.
Yes.
That's true. I was thinking the same thing.
Okay, I have time for one more. Anybody has it? Yeah.
Do you have your own hotline?
No, but I do have a website, and you can always email me through my website.
Cool. Thank you.
And I've got some videos on my website too.
And your website is?
DeborahBarron.com.
Okay.
One more?
I'm just wondering how in cases of victimization, I think for any of that to be true, you have to have the ability at your own free will. You know, say, you said it's your own thinking, you control your thought processes and how you would move through and how you feel. But if someone wasn't in control of that, you know what I'm saying?
If somebody was hurting you.
Yeah, if somebody was actually hurting someone, and they were, you know, and you couldn't control that. It's not just your thoughts saying, oh, I'm being mistreated or whatever,
Yeah.
or hurt.
Yeah.
You are, so you don't have that free will. I mean, you could use this as far as healing someone after the fact. But you have to have control of your own consciousness and your own thought while that's happening. Because if that's taken from you, they're not this.
I hear you.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It would be wonderful it's a great healing tool.
Well, so I
But-
love the fact that you see that it's a healing tool, because you're right. Because we if we go through a trauma, then that inner light in us is there to heal us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like when she was mentioning like the death of her mother, and we all experience that extreme grief and that when you're right in that moment,
There's nothing you
don't
can do.
have the freedom to control your I mean, it's just happening so quickly that you're feeling, you're not thinking, you're not really conscious of the thought, and you're really not capable of making the greatest
Yes.
decisions
You're
at
absolutely
the time.
right.
You have to come out of that space.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
You know, you have to get to that.
So if I could just give you a little bit of framework in this context for those kinds of situations. So first of all, I don't believe that we control our thoughts at all.
No.
We do not
No,
control our
it's just
thoughts.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah, they just show up. They just show up. And on the one hand, we can choose to believe them or not, but we absolutely do not control what thoughts show up. And when you're in the middle of something that feels really, really real, there's no way you can convince yourself that it isn't. There's no way.
You have to move beyond that,
You do.
that point. You have to just kind of
You
go
do.
beyond that and then do the reflection.
Yeah, completely. And the only thing that I think can be, even though this is not a prescription, there's no, since you understand this, therefore, it's just a description of what's happening. The one little area of hopefulness that I have found when something's really going to crap is that knowing that there's nothing wrong with being human, and that whatever I'm feeling, that's my humanity, and it's okay, and that everything is cyclical, and things are always gonna get worse, and things are always gonna get better, and things are always gonna get worse, and things are always gonna get better, and there is nothing on this earth that's permanent. So I think you see a lot here, and yeah, if you're curious to see more, there's always more to see. All right,
I'm
I think
getting
I
a
took
little
my 12
confused, I have a
minutes.
quick question. I'm a little confused,
Yeah.
because when you get thoughts, you can stop them, can't you?
You got a choice.
I can,
You
if I get a thought, I
react well on them or get rid of them.
right, can't you?
You got
So-
control of them.
So here's my
It's a
experience,
choice.
okay? In my experience, the only thing that can get rid of a thought is a new thought.
Is what?
A new thought.
Right, okay.
And that if I have having a thought that I don't like, I might be able to push it out of my head for a little while. And that, it takes a lot of effort. It takes me a lot of effort to get rid of a thought. And yet, if I can accept it and sit in it, it's that acceptance that when I'm relaxed, when I'm not fighting with myself, when I'm not trying to push a thought away, and I can just let myself be, that opens the space up for that new thought to come that much more easily. And I know we in our society, we do that a lot. We talk about positive thinking, and if you're having a negative thought, go find a positive one. Well, that's great when it works. And but it doesn't always. And so I've found that it's a whole lot more powerful to let myself be in that crappy thought and accept it and not fight with myself. And it's kind of crazy amazing how a new thought will show up, and half hour later I'll be like, oh my God, I got out of that crappy thought. So it's something to play with. Yeah, it's something to play with. And your inner wisdom will take you where you need to go on that if you let it.
Everyone has that, do you believe?
Oh, there's
Inner
no
wisdom?
question about it. You were born with it. It's what was there before your thoughts.
Interesting.
Just an example of what you were saying about controlling your thoughts, and something you said earlier kind of made me think, now, there's been a handful of times in my life that I've had like a really, really horrible bad dream. Like maybe someone in my family, something happened to one of them, and you wake up and you're still like stuck in that thought. And it takes forever to get, so kind of like what you were just saying, it takes me forever just to kind of recover from that thought, and then, I don't know, you don't really accept it, but you try to move on from it. And sometimes it's very hard. It is, that's the only example I can think of off the top of my head, is that's the one I really have a hard time getting rid of those kind of thoughts.
And yet, isn't it so cool to know that you dreamt it? You made it up.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's my own thoughts. It's not, I know it's not real, it's not reality, but it still bothers me, and I can't get it, can't stop thinking about it. So.
I think
All
it's
right,
hard
my time's
to,
up.
oh, sorry. Well, I can say another thing. I think it's hard too to stop thinking about it when it's negative versus when it's positive,
Well, why would you want to stop thinking about it? If it's
Yeah.
positive?
Yeah. Right, so, I know I tend to dwell so much more on negative than positive, yeah. So, and all the energy and stuff, it's exhausting, but I'm conscious of it, but I don't change it.
Well,
Try,
Yeah,
yeah.
just try letting yourself be it,
Yeah, it's just, I think, yeah, it's hard, but
Can I share
all we can do is try, yeah. Yeah, sure.
So my niece gets bullied on the bus. She's 7. So I take her to the bus in the mornings usually, and I call her, be kind, make a friend. Every day I say it.
Yeah.
Aw.
And it's starting to like, where the neighbor ladies are starting to say it when I'm not there, and they'll say it to her too. And then like, her dad says it to her when she goes to her dad's. So I just think it's like a big deal because she's a little girl, and getting on a big bus with all these kids that are not nice or nice, And I just think it's good for children to hear something positive at the beginning of the day, later than, So maybe it brings more positivity for the rest of the day. So I try, you know, like, it's like the small things you tell yourself. It's kind of like praying. When I pray, I say positive things. So it's like, instead of the sad stuff, I pray for the good stuff.
Right.
Kind of like a mantra, something you tell yourself,
Right.
you're telling her every day.
Right,
So
You're
it'll be,
building
yeah,
her,
something
you know?
she'll tell herself every day.
right,
And at 7, that's a great age, you know, because
Right.
perceptions start to get tuned and stuff.
Mhm.
That's awesome. She's lucky to have you.
I teach kids sometimes,
I love children.
and one of the big things that we teach them is that they have an inner spark. And nothing can ever touch that inner spark. And no matter what somebody else says, or what we think about what somebody else says, nobody can damage that inner spark. On that note, I am gonna end. It's been-
Thank you so much.